Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And holy schmoly, we're going to be talking about the coolest subject in the world today: why you should be on a podcast, and why you should want to be a guest or maybe even start your own. But, why is it so important for people to be on a podcast? So please join me in welcoming Noemi Bares to our program today. Welcome, Noemi. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me on your show today, Deb. I very well, thank you. It's in the afternoon, but I'm very well.
I love it. Well, you are on the beautiful island of Cyprus. I'm in Atlanta. But that's one of the things that is so cool about this is because of technology, we can be anywhere at any time, which has really, really helped with podcasts. I mean, it wasn't that long ago where we had to do them live, or we did them via other technologies. But now it makes it so easy to be a guest or be a host anywhere in the world.
So true. Thanks to COVID, our business basically started. I mean, that's all the whole story began. I always tell people that before 2020, I didn't even listen to podcasts. I didn't know much about them.
Right.
So it was a completely accidental decision how I ended up running a podcast booking agency. And and before 2020, and we had, together with my husband, we had an online travel related business. I was doing online marketing, social media marketing, blog writing, travel writing, you name it, wearing too many hats. And it was fun and I really enjoyed it. But COVID hit in 2020 and we were told that everything is going up, back and running in 2 weeks' time, but it didn't happen.
Everywhere they said 2 weeks and we went,
2 weeks and we'll be fine. And that was the time that luckily we had an Irish mentor. I'm going to talk about that, why Ireland is so important, because we lived in Ireland for 7 years before Cyprus. So we had close connection to the country, and we participated in a mentoring program for potential podcast agents. So basically it was like a very quick decision. We jumped in and it wasn't a huge investment. We learned a bit about how to run a podcast booking agency. Then we just took the leap and it's like, okay, we have to just start doing it if you want to pay your bills and if you want to continue your life on this beautiful island, because it costs money for sure. And that was it when in March 2020, we started our podcast booking agency, Podcast Connections, and started to work solely with female entrepreneurs in the e-commerce niche. Because what I thought is just so important for them to, hear their voice. The e-com industry is still very male oriented, but there are so many talented, amazing female e-commerce entrepreneurs out there. So we got in touch with them. And we basically cold emailed them or cold LinkedIn messaged them. And we picked them out because they were amazing. We listened to their interviews. We found them very interesting. And the knowledge they shared was amazing. So that's how we connected. And that's how we got our first clients on board. Mostly of our clients from the US, Canada, and UK. And those are the countries we focus on mostly.
I love it. Well, I was so excited to talk to you. I didn't even give your bio. So I'll just kind of give little snippets of it now. Your company is called Podcast Connections. And as you said, you help entrepreneurs and business owners enrich their lives through connections, sharing their knowledge and connecting them to quality podcast shows. And you are dedicated to helping experts grow their business with interviews. And that's really important because we're going to be talking about that. You have a master's degree in Danish Literature and Language. You are a linguist a content creator, and a master organizer. Oh my gosh, I love that. And in your free time, really, you have free time? She
No.
loves making hand-sewn collages on canvas and playing on her hand or hang and frame drum. There we go. Now we got that technical part out of the way. So I love that you focus on female entrepreneurs. Now, you did that when you started. Have you expanded, or do you still primarily focus on that?
We have a couple of male entrepreneurs too.
Okay.
And it was just like, it's, I would say like 70-30% right
Okay.
now. That is 70% female, 30% male entrepreneurs we work with. So there's, we are happy to work with anyone that we have a great vibe with. So it's with no exceptions or anything like that.
Right. So let's get into why people should do this, why they should be a guest, because that's probably the biggest question I get. And I'm assuming the biggest question that you get too. People say, well, who would want to hear what I have to say? And so what do you tell them?
People want to hear your story because everyone has a story and you need to share your story. It's just so important. I heard this so many times from people, but I don't have a story. I'm boring. I'm not interesting. Everyone has an interesting story to share. That's just so true. And because story sells, it's really important for your business too. So you don't have to entirely talk about like sell, and I want to, do this and that, or please buy my book. But by sharing your story, you will build relationship with the audience, and you will gain their trust. And especially if you appear at a lot of podcast interviews, because they will, let you know, they will get to know you, they will learn what you are about and learn your story. Right. I think it's really important.
And your guest number 908. So I've been doing this quite a long time. Some of those, 908 folks have been repeat guests, but for the most part, the vast majority are brand new people, many times people I've never talked to. Maybe I've read their book, but they come to us through someone like you, through an agency or a PR firm. A lot of times they do pitch themselves. Sometimes I will go after them. If I've read a book and I've thought it's great, or seen a speaker or something like that, I might go after them. But, one of the things people are always saying is, but what I talk about is boring. I talk about financial planning. I talk about, all these things that they think people don't care about. And I shouldn't single out financial planning, but we've had many very wonderful financial planning guests, because it's like you said, it's the stories that they tell, and for those who have some topics, some subjects that might be very specific, there are very specific podcasts, and so that's where it's great to either do the research yourself or have someone do it. But, I love that you say, it's about the stories. In 908 programs, there have been maybe 2 where after I got done, I went, okay. And I always figure that it's not them, it's me. For somehow I hadn't done my research well enough to make it interesting. And it was always very interesting. But there were sometimes where I'm like, okay, that was an okay program, right? Everybody does those.
Right.
But yeah, and I have talked to people on, pretty much any business subject, and a lot of things even that are not business related. It's my podcast. I can do what I want. But it is about, there's it telling that great story. But from your perspective, it's about how to tell it. And so that's how you work with people. So it's not just, hey, I want to go be on a podcast. There are processes and things to do. So, if I came to you and said, Noemi, I've got a message I want to share with the world. Now what? How are you going to work with me?
First, let's get to know each other.
Okay.
It's just so important. I don't like the word discovery call. It's just, I would prefer like a get to know call or something. And we just chat and we just talk about our lives, our background, our experience, even our families.
Okay.
I tell them my story and they share their story with me, because that's how we That's how we get to know each
Mm-hmm.
other. I had a couple of like discovery calls or get to know calls
Mm-hmm.
when people just wanted to talk about business and pricing,
Right.
but I don't
How
like
much
those.
do you cost?
How much do you cost? That's the first question.
Mhm.
It's no, it's not.
Mhm.
It's just like, let's,
Mhm.
you know, it's the same when you're dating. I
Mhm.
mean, you're not going to marry someone before you date them.
Right.
So it's the same situation. I mean, when we start to work together, we have to get to know each other.
Mhm.
And because we have to represent the client in front of these podcasts,
Mhm.
we have to dig deep into their
Mhm.
topics and niches and talking points,
Mhm.
even their bio.
Mhm.
So we can represent them fully
Mhm.
and in a great way in
Right.
front of these podcasts.
Mhm.
So that's the first thing. So just get to know each other.
Mhm.
And it's also important to know if it's a great vibe with us and if we can work together. It
Right.
happened before that we didn't
Mhm.
really have that vibe.
Mhm.
And I told the gentleman, I'm really sorry, but it's not going to work out.
Mhm.
I know we are not on the same page. And,
Mhm.
you know, he understood it.
Mhm.
Maybe he didn't at the beginning, but then he,
Right.
you know, he accepted it.
Mhm.
So sometimes you just have those vibes and conversations that you think that you won't be able to help them. And it's not, our aims are not the same, especially when someone comes to me and telling me that I want to be on, you know, Amy Porterfield and the celebrity podcast.
I want to be on the big ones, and I don't
the big
care about
ones.
the little ones.
Exactly. And I always try to tell them that's fine. You have those goals, you can have those dreams, but you have to do the small, the smaller podcast. You have to get into the habits and learn how to be a great guest and how to do interviews, because that's very important. It's like when you are a rock band and you do your gigs in pubs, and before you go to the Wembley, you're going to do hundreds of these small gigs in pubs. And then you reach a stage, it's like, yes, now I'm ready to do my big gigs. It's the same with podcast interviews. You have to go through those podcasts that maybe they don't have that huge listenership and huge audience, but if they are in your niche, they will really help your business, because your people, your audience, your listeners are out there and they're interested in what you're saying. And if you end up in let's say in a celebrity podcast, they weren't interested in you. They might be more interested in the host, because it's a celebrity and you're not. So they are there for them and not for you. So I think that's a big difference between, obviously we can always dream and we can always have goals, but I would say what we do, we always try to focus on the top 5 to 10% podcasts worldwide. And that's a good starting point for anyone who is deciding, to do interviews. You can just focus on those podcasts.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you say top 5 to 10%, that's a big number. I mean,
it is,
there are hundreds of thousands maybe of podcasts. And, the last stat I saw said that most and this has been a while, that most podcasts don't go past episode 30-ish. Because it's very hard work, from the host's perspective and promoting it and getting it set up and all of those various things. But, there are still thousands of potential podcasts that you can be on. So true. Yeah. I was thinking about that before, and there are lots of them, like 3.5 million podcasts and still, and counting podcasts out there. So yeah, there's much space to work on and to work with these podcasts, but you just have to dig deep and research. So that's the first very important thing. Right. So we get to know each other, just circling back to your question. So we get to know each other with the client. We know a lot about them. Then we always ask them to figure out or to write down 3 topics with a couple of talking points each, because that would help the host's work. I remember I filled out your form and you were asking for questions and talking points. And I love that, because you have a clear idea what my business is about. You're interested in that. And I had those interviews when the host didn't know what I was doing or what my business was all about and asking me those questions. But I love that when someone is prepared, and obviously the guest has to be prepared as well. So they help us with topics and talking points, and they have to prepare their one sheet too, because that's also important. So you can include your bio, again, your talking points, your previous media appearances,
your links,
Mm-hmm.
social links, your website, a nice headshot,
Mm-hmm.
like professional made.
Mm-hmm. Right. Even if they're not going to be on video, it's still kind of nice to know what they look like.
Yeah. It's just your, I don't know, your vibes and how you smile.
And when we promote the programs, we use their photo.
Yeah, exactly. So it's also important. So we also ask them to have that ready too.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't have it, we can always help them to
Mm-hmm.
create a one page, a one sheet. We have templates and they can choose from, and we are happy to help them according to their brand and colors and everything. So these are the first steps that we do when we get together with someone new and with a potential client.
Excuse me, and I love that. It's from the host perspective, because, I want them to come prepared. And the reason I asked for talking points is I want to cover what they want to cover. Now, am I guaranteeing it? No, because as I mentioned to you before the program, I might go squirrel and go off on something totally different. But, if they want to, I want to give them the best interview possible. So that means talking about what they want to talk about, not what I want to talk about. And so that's why I asked that. And it's so funny because every once in a while I'll get pushback. And, or my favorites are the ones that say, I can talk about anything. No, you can't. You need to tell me, okay, what are the 5 things you'd like to talk about? You don't need to give me very specific questions or, things like that. And then my all-time favorite was from a podcast booker who, and we do send this format in advance. I don't take their, they might send a one sheet, but I have my template. I've been doing this a while, humor me, right?
Of course.
And that's the thing. I've had some people say, well, no, we're not going to fill out your form. I'm like, well, then I'm not going to have that person as a guest, whether it's, the guest doing it or the booker. Because it's cut and paste. I mean, this is not, we're not, asking for them to do War and Peace. But I had a booker who said, who responded when I said, you need to fill out the form. It's your job as the host to do the research. and I went, I don't think so. And so, went back to her and, and I said, no, I need, and so then she, allowed us how she would send a one sheet. I mean, this was, bless her little heart. She'd actually been doing this a while. And so, but the guest interested me enough that I thought, okay, I can wing it. Cause again, I've been doing this a long time. And so, did the interview, it went fine. And then afterwards, we were just kind of chatting and I said, I'm curious, are you getting as many bookings as you had hoped? And he said, well, to be honest, no. And I said, I'm going to tell you why. And I didn't like the tattling part of it, but he was paying for something he was not getting. But yeah, it's, people need to remember the host or the producer or whoever, they're the ones in charge. And if we say we need 2 pictures, we need 3 questions, we then give them 2 pictures, 3 questions. And if you're the guest, same thing, you should be able to do that.
That's very interesting when it comes from like a podcast booking agency. Like I'm doing the same, and you have to follow the rules, and that's it. Right. I mean, we all have rules, and we never have to forget that you are a guest on a podcast, and you are invited. So you just have to be thankful and grateful for that, because it's not the host. I mean, you can have anyone on the show, and you can pick anyone. Right.
I know we have as we're recording this, we have probably 4 months worth of names that we could.
Yeah. So you have to respect that and be respectful, because it is really, and just courteous and respectful to the host and their audience, because that's just like the human connection in real life, in business, that's the same. And if they ask you to do something, you do it. I had podcasts and have to fill out the same form 3 times, and I did it for my clients, and that's it. I mean, it's I didn't necessarily like it, but I did it.
Yeah, you're kind of like, are they not paying attention? But
a bit.
and if they're an author wanting to talk about their book, And that's the other thing is, I have lots of authors on who don't want to
Yeah.
talk about their book. But if they want to talk about their book, then I require a copy of it because I'm going to read it. I am not one of these hosts. Now, I know there are a lot of hosts out there who don't read the books for whatever reason. I read the books. That's part of why I do this. It's very cool. I get all these, but I also tell them it does not have to be a physical book. It can be an ebook because I don't need them to go to the expense of sending me a book. And bless them when they do, but they're just all here on the bookshelves. I think I'm going to donate them to like a business school. But yeah, an e-version. And I've gotten, pre-published versions, all sorts of things, PDFs. I mean, doesn't really matter what it is. But if you want me to talk about your book, then I need to have at least skimmed it pretty good. I've had people who have said, well, you can request one free chapter. No. And granted, for many of these, I could go on to Amazon and I can get the Kindle version, for under $10.
Yeah.
That's not the point. If you want me to talk about your book, you need to be prepared to provide a copy of it. And especially, like I said, an e-version is perfectly acceptable.
Yeah. And it's so easy. I know, like, I work with a lot of authors and they do have e-versions. Like I would say 90% of them have an e-version of their books. So it's just so easy to, I remember I did email a couple of those to you as well.
Right.
Or if someone wants to, they can post it. I mean, it's a nice gesture, I think. And it's nice to, have a copy in your hands and then you can donate it afterwards.
Yeah. And the one thing that I miss by not getting the hard copy is being able to hold it up and show people.
Show it.
And so then I asked the guest, hey, do you have a copy of your book handy? Hold it up when we talk about it. And because that all leads us to the fact that this is, whether it's you, your book, your business, whatever, podcasting is part of a great marketing strategy. So explain more about that.
Yes, I mean, there are so many advantages and to do podcast guesting, and just for several reasons. I mean, first of all, the reach, because podcasts have a large and very dedicated audience worldwide. And as you mentioned before, like your audience, like most of them are from the US, but the rest are from, from Europe and different countries. So that's really interesting. So being a guest on a podcast allows you to tap into that audience and reach new potential customers. So that's a possibility. I'm not saying that like out of like one single podcast interview, you will get 100 customers because you want.
I wish I had that influence, right?
But you won't. But sometimes it happens. And I've seen stories and I've seen that one of my clients was a guest on a show and was hired on the spot by the host because the host liked what she did and it was a great business model. So it was interesting. So that's the first one, like one of the reasons. The second reason is credibility. I mean, appearing as a guest in a podcast, it gives you a level of credibility with the audience and they are more likely to trust you, what you have to say, if they heard you or seen you on a podcast interview, because they know that you are someone they know and respect. So that's also very important. I would say the third reason to be a guest is authority. That's a very big thing because podcasts often focus on specific niches or industries, and being a guest on a specific podcast is just you establish yourself as an authority in that area. And that's very important. So you're not just a guru or a self-made or fake guru or whatever. You appear somewhere and you just talk about something, but you have authority to talk about those topics. One of the other reasons is networking. I love networking. I do a lot of networking. I really enjoy that. And what I also enjoy and network a lot with hosts, obviously because of my job, but because I just love connecting with people, especially on LinkedIn. I think it's an important platform. So podcast guesting can be a brilliant way to network with other experts and like a podcast host, and you can make valuable connections with you or with your audience. I mean, that's the perfect opportunity.
Right.
Then content. That's a big thing when it comes to marketing strategy and podcast guesting, content creation. And we all struggle with creating enough content for social media and for every day and for LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok. There's so many opportunities, so many options out there. So when you have an interview and the host is so gracious and to give you, just tell you that you can use give you permission to use the interview. It's an evergreen content. You can use it in any way you want. You can make audio clips, videograms, quote cards out of it, blog posts. Or one of my host friend told me the other day that you can write newsletters and you can include basically a whole interview in that newsletter so people can read it, or a LinkedIn newsletter. So there are endless opportunities out there that you can use your content, and you don't have to struggle creating content because you can reuse it, reapply it. Like sometimes I go back to my old interviews like 2 years ago and I repost them with like different text or different picture or different audiogram or videogram, and it's fun because it gives something back to the host, because I appreciate their work. I know you work a lot, and I mean, being a podcast host and running a podcast is it's a lot of work. Even if I know hosts, they do it alone, they do editing and everything alone. But if you have a team, that's great, but it's still a lot of work, and it costs you money.
Right.
And so I think that's really important. So that the content you create is just king, and you just have to use it wisely and share the interview as well. But yeah, that's also another thing that you have to focus on. And it's also cost effective to be a guest. Right. It's much more cost effective than being a host. Obviously, you just pay with your time because you prepare, you have to prepare, you need to prepare. It's important. But then the rest is on the host. And you just go on these shows and share your knowledge, tell your story. That's really important. And what people don't think about sometimes, that why is a good marketing strategy podcast guesting is basically the branding. The podcast guesting can be a very, very powerful tool to build your brand, establish your brand, because you appear so many places and people just type your name into Google and you appear everywhere because you're building your brand, and your brand is just becoming stronger and stronger day by day as your interviews goes live. So people just see your name up everywhere. So it's like, they're doing something right, they're doing something good. And that's branding is also an important angle of the whole your marketing strategy of podcast guesting.
Right. The couple points that you mentioned that I want to delve into. The first is authority. I've had several guests who are under 20, and and I mean, most people would just initially totally write them off, right? Or even people in their 20s, and they are incredible guests because it's just fascinating to me, because I'm not 20 and I don't know where I'm going with my life, and they're very young, and at least for that point in time they know. But it is so interesting to me when they have that knowledge to be able to share, and so I love being able to help them share that with the world. And then the other thing you mentioned is to continue to use content, to put it out there. And it's, as a podcast host, we always provide all of our social media links, and, here's how to tag us. Now, we're not everywhere. We're pretty much just on X, or whatever the heck we're calling it this week. LinkedIn, obviously, and Facebook. But, I know people, are posting on other platforms, but we will give you those links. And so it's so important that you tag the host. It's exactly what you said. Tag the host, tag the show, do whatever, so that you're promoting them again. Because I tell you what, if you ask to be on my program again, and I never saw you mentioned anywhere your first time, then I'm thinking, clearly they're just in it for themselves. And seriously, folks, it's not that hard, but that is part of why I have the branding in here, so that if they forget, and there are people who just forget, I've had guests who have posted 5 years after their interview, because I'll see it and I'll think, I don't remember talking to them. And so I'll go back and look and think, oh my gosh, this was 5 years ago. So that is, again, why it's so important that you have evergreen content, even if you are pitching a new book or something like that, because you still want to continue selling it. And you can use it as a way to say, hey, we wrote this book, now we've got a new one out. Things like that. But yeah, it's there are so many ways to continue using this content for months, even years.
Absolutely. I always nudge my clients. So please share, because sharing is caring. Please share the interview. It's just so important. Tag the host in any way you can. And sometimes what I also advise, just, can you please just send a follow-up note to them that you liked the interview? How did you feel about it?
Right.
And I know some people just send cards out. I know we're not doing that anymore, but you can still, there are still services you can use, and you can send out these, thank you cards, or even you just email them and tell them just a thank you for that you were on the show.
Right.
I mean, that's a big thing. But what I always advise, tag them, share them, repurpose, reshare. It's so important. It's a win-win situation for everyone.
Right.
You're not doing a favor for the host, you're doing a favor for yourself. That's
because more than likely, if I see it now, there are times where I just don't see it, but I'm going to respond, so that puts it back into my feed, so then my followers, my fans, my whatever they are, see it and go, oh, maybe this is something that I should be watching.
Absolutely. And they just appreciate it. And then there's also another option, because I was doing some social media marketing in my previous business. So once you tag, first I tag you, so your followers will see my content as well. So, I mean, you have a lot of followers. So basically my outreach will expand in that way. So that's amazing opportunity. Not just like, okay, I'm not using your followers or anything, but the outreach is going to be much bigger, wider, and more powerful. So we can share that knowledge like wide across LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter or X or whatever. Yeah. So yes, it's important.
Right. Well, one of the things you mentioned is kind of the pre-research. So, you as a booker, or, someone who's doing this on their own, you're going to figure out the programs that are a good fit, right? And in all these years, which is, 11, 12, I don't know. I think we've only ever completely turned down 2 people, and that was because nobody could figure out how what they were pitching to me could work. And I try my hardest. I had a young woman who is now a good friend, who came to me with a pitch. She said, I have written a book on in vitro fertilization. And it's a story written for kids to kind of explain to them. And I went, this is a business podcast. and she said, okay, I will tell you how I marketed it. And so she talked about her marketing strategy. And so that was perfect. Same thing with a woman who wrote a book about the hazards of early use of marijuana products on developing minds, right? Yep. So teenagers. And unfortunately, her son committed suicide because of it. He thought he could fly. The psychosis it caused, and so again, it was like, okay, this is, but I did think, okay, this is an important subject that we need to get out there. And she wasn't saying no pot or anything like that. It was just, this finite little time period of, when their minds are developing. And I actually got some negative comments. It was one of the few times I did. But she, again, approached it from the business standpoint. Here's how we are getting our message out there, all of those various things. So for the most part, you can probably figure out a way to get in there. But what are some of the ways you research, especially specific programs?
It takes a lot of time and work. That's why people don't like doing it. And
they want the list, right? They Google top marketing podcasts, and then they pitch to those,
and
right?
it's good for me. There you go. And I just pitch myself everywhere. But no, I mean, you have to dig deeper. Obviously, there are places you search on iTunes. That's a good place to start. But also Listen Notes. Listen Notes is a good place to check out the podcast, to see the listenership. You won't see the downloads, because those numbers, what you see there, is always just estimated numbers. So they're not 100% sure, but you will get the messages like which percentage they are in, like top 5, 10, 0 point something. Yeah, those are very good ones. And so you start to research on these typical sites. And for example, if you type something in on iTunes, that's what we do many times. So one podcast will come up, obviously, that you're looking for, and then all these other options that are connected to the same topic. So it's basically, you can go down in this rabbit hole, and it's because you start with one, and it's like, oh my gosh, I mean,
that sounds interesting.
Very interesting, and there's more and more coming up, and then it's what I can advise you, just to have a Google sheet or an Excel worksheet or something, just a simple thing. I mean, you don't have to go, over the board with anything, and try to collect these interviews one by one. And you just going to make a note of their URL, maybe the name of the host, the name of the podcast, and you have basically an organized system, like just something to begin with. Then you can go back to these shows, and then you can, once you have all the information about them, you can start reaching them out. But you need a system to do that, because there are a lot of shows out there, and you can get lost in the crazy world of podcasting. Yeah.
Right. Well, and depending on who the guest is, they might do better with short podcasts. So, 15 minutes or less. I have a friend who does 90. Now, she doesn't have guests, but she does a 90-second podcast. And it's just basically a quick little tip of the day. It's very successful, but yeah, you have other guests who need a longer period of time. So an hour, like mine, most podcasts are 30-ish minutes. I mean, that's kind of the average. From a host perspective, I tell you, one of the things that always impresses me is when I get the pitch and it says, "We love listening to your podcast. I especially liked your interview with Noemi Bares." Now, I know that they very well may not have listened to the interview. They looked at it online and they went, "Here's a name, we're going to match it up," right? And they just filled in the blank. But they took a little bit of extra time to at least go to either iTunes or our website or something like that to see who a guest was. Now, you do a little bit more and say, "I love that they talked about X." And and then I'm sold. I'm like, and what I do is those actually take priority on our list. If somebody has taken a little bit of extra time besides going to Google and Googling in top business podcasts, it goes a little bit further with me.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's my second advice. After you do your research, listen to the episodes. If you have time, at least one episode. Just try to, even if you don't listen to the whole episode, just to get the vibe or just get to know the whole style. It's just so important. Obviously, I didn't listen yesterday to an episode, but I know your style. I listened to many
because
of your
we
episodes.
Work together.
Yeah, I listened to many episodes, so I know what you do, but it's important. So please just listen to an episode or two, and first you learn something from the host and the guest. You always, so it's always. And the second, you just have to get to know the host a bit and their style. It's very important. Otherwise, it's just becoming so faceless and so.
Oh yeah, I know when somebody is doing the multitude of podcasts to pitch a book. Bless them, because that is part of this process. But when I can tell that I'm like the 15th interview that week, I feel for them, for one thing. But their answers, they're tired by that point.
Yeah. No, what I advise and what we tell our clients, so we have a very simple system that we use. They decide how many interviews they want to do. So there's no pressure on them. They can pick. If they want to do once a month, that's okay. You have time, energy, money for that. That's fine. What we advise, start with 2. That's a good place. So like every second week you have one, and that's okay. And it's a good place. What I would love to do, like if I would have more time, hopefully I will in the future, I would love to do once per week, because first I love doing interviews and interacting with people, and it's not so much pressure on you, and you won't end up like a robot and just telling your story like in a very unnatural way. But for me, if you come prepared and you speak clearly and you're not too formal and you're funny and you're conversational rather than stiff, that's so important. But if you overwork yourself and you do like 10 interviews per week, that's no good for anyone. I mean, you're going to be tired and your voice will suffer. So I wouldn't do that if I were anyone. So.
Right. Do you do practice interviews, especially for someone who's brand new to this?
To be honest with you, Deb, I've never done it.
Okay.
But if they ask me to, I would love to do
Okay.
it. Like we might offer that service in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Most of our clients, we didn't do it because most of our clients are seasoned guests on podcasts,
right. So they
or hosts.
know they've got the right equipment set up, all of
or
those
hosts, yeah. And they did many interviews before. They have the equipment, they have the camera, they have the mics, like me, and they don't really need. If they have any questions or if they need any guidance or anything, help with the interviews, I'd be happy to provide that. But we didn't do. I know there are podcast agencies out there that they offer this in their packages, so they do that. But it's fun. I mean, you can definitely try that. Or what I suggest, maybe you don't need to practice with me or with another podcast agent. Just sit down for half an hour and just I have my topics around me most of the time. So I can, I just cheat sheets and just something so I won't forget things. I'm big on lists and organizing stuff. So I love that. And just try to talk and just imagine that the host is on the other side and try to talk about your topics, maybe, in your bedroom, in your office, or just practice. Some people say that don't do that because you will sound very practiced. But if you are a beginner, when it comes to podcast guesting, you need to practice. You can wing it. You need to practice. There's a lot of practice goes into these interviews. And after a while, obviously, you're getting better at it. But no one's going to be like perfect at their first interview. So.
And sometimes those who've done 900 screw up. I mean,
they do. We all do. We are human. I mean,
and then we have technology issues. I mean, all sorts of things. I've been in the middle of an interview and power has gone out. That's fun. And so we picked it up the next day, and the guest was so funny. I immediately contacted her on my cell phone and said, I have no idea when power's coming back, so go ahead with your day. And she was able to reschedule the next day, which was good because it was still all very top of mind for us. But she said, should I wear the same clothes? Good thought, right? And I, I mean, that really, and I said, nah, we're going to use it. I'll explain why I said, because these things happen. But it's, I have had guests on who have done less than 5 interviews. I mean, I've had a couple who it was their very first interview. And I try to make it as comfortable for them as possible because I don't want it to be their one and only interview. I don't want them to go, oh my God, I'm never doing that again. But I tell you, I did, it is a stretch for someone to do their very first interview as an hour. That's a long period of time. But it is important as the guest to make sure that you have the right equipment. And we're not talking a big expense here, folks. I mean, my mic, which I'll move into the frame here for a second, is a big blue Yeti. It's probably under $100 now on Amazon. I don't do a headset because it would mess up my hair.
We don't like that.
I know, us women, right? And so I do an earpiece. So you have earpieces, but one of the best headsets that people can use are gaming headsets because they've got the mic built in, things like that. And think about your background. What are people going to see? All of those various things. And then more importantly, what are they looking at? I have done more than one interview where I've talked to somebody's ear, or seen their ceiling fan the entire time because they didn't have their camera in the right place. Now, do most people watch? No, you and I talked about that before, but, it's a podcast, that's audio. So, it doesn't really matter, but there are people who watch it. But obviously, it is a podcast. It is audio. If your audio is not good, it's not going to matter how wonderful you are, how knowledgeable, any of those things. If it's not good audio, it's not going to work.
So important. Yeah, I just bought a new mic yesterday. This is my new baby here.
We're breaking it in. Yay.
Yeah, you're the first. I had a smaller one before. That was a good quality too. And it cost like, I think something like, $30 or something. That was okay. This was a bit more expensive. But because I use it a lot, so I invested it because I use it a lot. It's important. I don't have any fancy camera. You don't need a fancy camera.
Right. My camera is, a Logitech, and it's again $100-ish.
Yeah, I don't even have an external camera. I use my MacBook Air's camera, which is usually a good quality. So I'm obviously a host, so you need like an external camera, but most of the time you don't even need that. Many clients of mine ask me, so especially when they started out or were beginners, what do I need? It's like not much, maybe an earpiece, a camera, but the built-in
a private area.
So important.
And I had a guest one time, and we weren't recording. It was just on Skype, so I could just hear him. So no visual, but I kept hearing this loud noise, and I finally said, "What is that?" And he said, "Well, I'm sitting on my deck, and they're cutting down trees next door." And I said, "Go inside."
That's very interesting. I mean, at least an office space, or even if your bedroom, that's fine. I did interviews like many times in my bedroom before because I didn't have any other space, but it was good because it wasn't echoing because a lot of cushions and everything around. So you need a space. And we talked about this, and I also wrote a LinkedIn article about this, about the background, which is also important because if you don't have your laundry around or your kids' toys around, or just try to be just something neutral, something nice. It doesn't have to. It can be like a white wall, as I have it here, and like two pictures of like collages of mine, and that's it. You don't have to go over the top. And you can also use these virtual backgrounds. I'm not a huge fan of them. Because sometimes your ears
you get the glowy face, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Or they hold something up and you can't see it.
You can move, and it's very strange. But you have a neutral background, maybe a bookshelf behind you, or like you have those cute puppies around.
Yes, I have my little stuffed critters.
Exactly.
And these are bookshelves that they're just covered. And because remember when we first went into COVID, and all these people who had never done Zooms before didn't do anything with their backgrounds. They were just, they did what they could. I mean, because we were thrown into this, and everybody was like, what are they reading? What are they reading?
What's there? What's there?
And I have a friend who said, she did hers in her bedroom. She didn't have any other space and thought it was perfectly fine until a coworker said, tell me where I can buy that bedspread. Now, she said her bed was always made. It was always very neat.
Right.
But it never occurred to her that her bedspread was the focus of what people were watching. And there's certainly easy screens you can get. I have on mine, it is a white wall back there, which I thought was just pretty boring. And so I bought stick-on wallpaper. Cost me $49 for the roll, and it's just here on the wall behind me. And I thought, if I didn't like it, it was stick on. I could peel it back off really pretty easy. But we have both made a very conscious effort of what are people going to see behind you, because you are to be the focus. Now, if you're an author, have your books back there. Have your logo, do whatever, but don't have people be going, now what is that? Because I had really cute inspirational sayings behind me, and I discovered people were looking more at those than at me, and so it's just and again, set it up. Like if you're using the camera on your laptop, you probably going to you need to put your laptop up on books or something.
Yeah,
so your eye level is level with that camera. Otherwise, people are looking either at the top of your head or up your nose. And that's not a good look for anybody. So like I said, books, folk. We're not saying go spend and buy this put up some books there. Long ago we would have used the phone book, right? Because we had these 3-inch phone books. They don't have those anymore. But just set your laptop. And I've had people who've done their interviews on their iPhones. They just had them appropriately set up, so that it looked very professional.
It has a good camera. I have an iPhone too, and it's like an amazing camera. And even the sound recording, I think is perfect. So if you have no other choice, you can still do it. There are a lot of options out there. You just have to be a bit creative, I guess.
Right.
So it's important.
Well, and the reason it's important is you are selling yourself and or your business. So you want to come across as professional. Would you have a website that was half done? Or had poor images and all sorts of things like that? It's just you, and I tell people this all the time, you are the face of your business. And I don't care if you're the director of sales or whatever. At this point in time, when you are talking to a podcast host, you are the face of that business, and it had better be giving a very good impression.
Yes. So I agree with you 100%. Just so true. You represent this company or yourself and your company. And the other thing is that this interview will stay in Google forever, probably. So you have to be careful what you're putting out there, because when, as I said before, people search your name, you will appear, and those interviews will be there. So you don't want to look unprofessional. Obviously, you can't look the same all the time, but try to, especially females, we have to use makeup.
We change our hairstyles.
Yes, we change our hairstyles, and we just use a bit of makeup. The guys, it's easier for them. They just put in a shirt, whatever. I really envy them for that. But but obviously, just make a bit of effort, because it's just be respectful. Make a bit of effort. Do your hair, look decent when you're on camera, nothing too revealing, obviously, when you're on camera, and just act human and just have a human conversation with another person on the other side of the world. And that's what I tell them. It's just a conversation. Okay, maybe thousands will hear it, but
and that's what I tell my guests. We're just going to chat. And so I always do. The way I set it up is we do about the first 10-ish minutes of just talking, a little get to know you type of things. Sometimes we do a little bit more, sometimes we do a little bit less. It all depends on how much, and obviously if it's somebody I know, we don't do that at all. We just jump right into recording. But it helps me to kind of establish that little rapport. Now, I know there are some podcast hosts, I've been on podcasts where they've required an entire pre-visit of 15 minutes, whatever. Fine, that's what they want, that's what I'm going to do. And so again, you just kind of do what that host wants to do.
Yes. Yeah, I know a lot of hosts, and they do pre-calls and pre-interviews, and that's absolutely fine. Because if you meet a stranger, it's really hard to talk about their story, and they really have to get to know each other and just bond a bit before the interview. I think it's a great way. From a podcast agent's point of view, it's a bit time consuming, because obviously you have to organize.
It's an extra thing you're having to schedule.
It's an extra thing you have to schedule, and it's extra thing you have to set up. But if it works for them, and it gives them peace of mind, let's do it. I mean, it's their show and their rules. We have to follow them.
Right. And the guest, obviously, when they are working with an agency or a booker, remember, you need to make it as easy for them as possible. My calendar is on Google, and I keep it very, very current. Other people have access to that calendar. So, you're not doing that. Will this work? Will that work? Will this work? Will that work? Because pretty soon the host is going to say no. So make it as easy for the people you're working with as possible. And you might have constraints, like, you might have kids that are coming home at 3 p.m. So you can't do anything after 3 p.m. Fine. Just tell them can't do anything after 3 p.m. Or, if that's the time when the host says, I can only do 4, well then, okay, we'll figure something out. But, you do want to make it as easy for everybody as possible. I've had guests, a couple who were a little prima donna, and I had one, it was so funny. He tells me, we're all set up, we're ready to record. And he says, now I can give you 15 minutes. And I said, no. I said, the name of the program is the Business Power Hour. And he was pitching a book, and I probably was his 10th one that week. So he just hadn't paid any attention. And he apologized profusely. And he said, I honestly can't give you that much time right now. He said, what do I need to do to reschedule? And every once in a while I do have people say, how long is it? It's the Business Power Hour. And there are obviously times where I have made accommodations where they have said, oh my gosh, I've screwed up. I only have 30 minutes, or there's somebody that I want to talk to bad enough that I will say, okay, we'll only do 30 minutes. But it is an hour program. So when I say, when somebody is scheduling, it's an hour and 15 minutes. That's what goes into their calendar unless they change it. But again, think of this as you're getting together with them for tea, coffee, scotch, whatever it is. And you want to make it as easy as possible. You don't want them to have to drive all the way across town. You don't want to have to do it, at 2:00 in the morning. Whatever you can do as that guest, accommodate the host. But because, as we said, we got other people we can be going to.
Especially when you work with different time zones.
Mm-hmm. Time zones make it really fun. You and I are, what we decide, 5 hours apart? No, more than that. We're
more. Which time zone are you?
Let's see. So I am in Pacific. No, where am I? I'm in Atlanta. I'm in Eastern time zone.
Eastern, 7 hours. I'm 7 hours ahead of you. Yeah,
right.
I'm 7 hours ahead of you. So that's it. And I always have to keep an eye on the schedules and everything when you, for example, schedule something, so you won't mess it up, because obviously there are different time zones you have to see. But you can figure it out when they use Calendly. It's just so easy to pick the right time zone, the right date and time, and that's it.
Yeah. Don't be sitting here going 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, I think it's 4:00 there, right? But yeah. Well, oh my gosh, Noémi, this has been absolutely wonderful. And I think we need to have you on like once a year to remind people this is, this is how to do this. But we've only got a couple minutes left. So tell us, how do people find you and work with you, and what are the services that you provide?
You can find us on our website, obviously, which is podcastconnections, plural.co, not co.
Yes,
that's our website. Co. It's CO, not COM. And you always find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn. So just type my name in, Noemi Bares. I'm there. Get in touch with me. I'm happy to chat with anyone and give you advice. Even if you don't work with me, I'm happy to have a conversation. You can always book a discovery call, which I don't like to use, but I do, on our website. And we help people, as you mentioned at the beginning of the show, to get on quality podcast shows and help them to share their knowledge worldwide. That's what our service offers. It's a done-for-you service. So we organize everything when it comes to podcast guesting. We do the research. We do everything that I mentioned during the show. We send those emails back and forth. We schedule, we reschedule, we cancel. We do everything. And that's what we include. We also help you to develop your topics if it's needed, or if you need a one sheet, we're happy to, make one for you, or anything when it comes to any questions you have, we're happy to answer before you become our client, or if you're an existing client too, of course.
I love it. Well, this really has been so much fun. And like I said, we need to chat more often, to remind folks and again, to tell them it's so important that you get your message out there. A podcast is being a guest on podcast is so absolutely phenomenal. But until we chat with you again, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with?
Yes, absolutely. And whatever you do, I mean, when it comes to podcast guesting, live, business, relationships, just be consistent and persistent. That's my advice. It's just so important. And once you have those qualities, you will reach your goals for sure. So that's my motto in life.
I love it. Well, I am Deb Creer. I've been having so much fun talking with Noemi Bares of the Podcast Connections. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.